Okay, so next we'll download the Ubuntu image. If we go to the Docker Hub, hub.docker.com, scroll down, we can see here they have it right on the front page. But just to show you where it's at, click See Official Images. That brings us to this Docker Hub page. This is what I would consider the main Docker Hub page. We have this area over here where we can pick and choose what we want to search for. We have this area here that we can pick and choose what type of image that we want to search for. But let's scroll down here, and right here is the Ubuntu image. We can click on this. This brings us to the Ubuntu image webpage. We can scroll down here, see the information on it. Here's the link. We can click here to copy the link to our clipboard. And this is the same link that I have here. Okay. So here, we'll clear the screen. We'll run Docker images. Nothing in our repository. I'll right click, put in the pull. So Docker, pull the Ubuntu image and press enter. It can tell that I've previously downloaded it. If you haven't downloaded it previously, it might take a little while. Won't take long, a few minutes, Then if we run Docker images again, you can see we have the Ubuntu image in our repository. Okay, so down here we talk about running the image. First, I want to show you how to run the image without the IT switch. When you run an image, the IT switch is very common. So here, I just want to show you the difference between running the image without the IT switch, and then we'll run it with the IT switch. We'll clear the screen, paste in the run command, and hit enter. Okay, so the run command executed. Docker ran the Ubuntu image, created a container, and then quit, and gave us our regular C prompt back. If we go Docker PS, we can see we have no containers running. Okay. Now we'll run it with the IT switch. Now we'll run it with the IT switch. Okay. So what Docker did here was it ran the Ubuntu image using the -IT switch, and what the IT switch does is it keeps a shell open to our container. So now we can run Linux commands on the Docker container, on the Ubuntu Docker container. Okay, so just to show you that's the container is running, I'll open up another command prompt. And we'll go docker ps. And you can see here we have one container running. We have a container ID. We have the image is Ubuntu. It's running a bash shell when it started, and sometimes when you run an image, Docker will give it a generic name. When you run an image, you can also name the image if you want more specific names. I think what it does is it grabs a scientist name and sticks it in here just so there's some type of name. Okay. This is what I was talking about earlier. If we come back up here, sometimes we can't delete an image. See, this image is being used up here. So if we try to delete it, just to show you how this works, if we go docker images, so here's our image ID. We'll get the image ID, copy, and then we'll try to delete it. So it says I can't delete that image because there's a container running that is using that image. So sometimes you need to do a docker stop on a container ID. So this would be the container ID. We do a docker stop on this container ID. See, docker container stop on the container ID. And then we can come back and run the, and then we can come back and remove the image. Okay, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves there. So just to follow my notepad file here, we can do a PS here, and it shows us that we have a bash shell. When you run Linux and you get a command line, it's inside of a shell. Okay, for most of us it's just a screen. You know, we're looking at Linux through a screen, but this is actually a Linux shell that's running. And this particular type of shell is called a bash shell. There's different types of shells that we can run. Bash is the most popular. There's a handful of shells. They all have strong points and weak points, but bash seems to be the most common. Usually the commands between the different shells, they're more or less the same, but there might be small differences that might in the commands and the switches, so you just have to be aware of what shell you are using. This IT switch, that's the main thing I'm trying to show you here. In general, all you have to know is you use the IT switch to keep a shell open to the container. So we can run Linux commands on the Ubuntu container. Okay, but real briefly, the IT switch keeps a shell open to the Ubuntu container. So we can execute commands on the Ubuntu container. Okay, I have a Udemy course that I'm working on that I go into a lot more detail on how the IT switch works. It's kind of a tricky topic. Sometimes it kind of hangs people up, but it's really no big deal. The only thing you really have to know is you use the IT switch when you want a shell. Okay, so I'm presuming that you're new to Linux and new to Docker. So what I recommend is when you get into learning Linux, there's different ways that you can go about it. So I recommend first learn to become just a general user. How to use the desktop, how to use some basic command line commands. When we do it inside of a container, when we run Ubuntu inside of a Docker container, we only have a command line. There's no GUI. There's no icons to click on. If you install Linux on your laptop or run it off a DVD, you'll have a GUI. You'll have a desktop that you can click on icons, somewhat similar to Windows and Mac. Okay, so that's learning to become a general user. Next, learn some basic administration skills. Learn how to run a server, a Linux server, how to set up a printer, how to set up a mail server, how to set up a website, and things like that. Next, learn the networking end, the wiring, how to set up the IP address, how to work with TCP/IP, those type of things. Then get into the security end, how to do the updates, how to protect the server from viruses and other types of attacks, how to set up a firewall, how to set up an intrusion detection system, things like that. Okay, so first, basically here we're going after how to be a user, and we're mainly using the command line. Now, if you install Linux at home, you're kind of stepping into the administration area because you have to learn how to install it, how to set it up. Okay. These days, installing Linux is fairly easy as compared to the way it was years ago. You just pop in the DVD and it installs. And these days they have what they call is a live DVD. You can download an image of Linux, burn it to a DVD, and you can use that DVD to install it on a laptop or desktop, or you can actually run Linux right off the DVD. You don't have to install it on your computer. So that's what they mean by a live DVD. And that's a great way to get started. You can go to Linux magazines. They usually have a DVD that has versions of live Linux right on the DVD, so you don't even have to download one.